for our next speaker. For our next speaker introduction, final speaker of the night, we are going to have Matt Tierman do the award and introduction.
Raheem, they allowed you here? Oh my goodness. We got a lot of content to cover. We're gonna go fast, but just, keep up. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, on behalf of the New York Young Republicans Club and Club President Gavin Wax, I have the distinct honor of introducing and awarding the inaugural Frederic Rene Coudert Jr. Award to this first and absolutely fitting recipient, Stephen K. Bannon. To all in this room, Steve Bannon likely needs no introduction, but I'm going to do what I can to share some insights on Steve and his impact. By way of background, I've had the great privilege of working with Steve these last several years as the upstart populist political right has racked up many victories all over the globe. Many of these victories can be directly attributed to his leadership and his unique ability to execute a strategic vision through communication and networking and sheer strength of personality. I was fortunate at his behest to become a Breitbart contributor focused on Poland and Central Europe for a few years and worked with him on more than a few projects, foreign and domestic, since then. Distributing the Bannon-Peter Schweitzer-produced Clinton Cash documentary in Europe in 2016, even getting it on Polish public television ahead of the election, was a particularly satisfying project. Steve's bio and extensive resume are very illuminating as to who he is and how his worldview developed. A worldview which has made inroads all over the world, to the deep, deep consternation of the institutional left. As most of the world knows, Steve was CEO of Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. He helped craft a holistic platform to galvanize a new populist base of silent majority Americans, a platform that delivered the heavily unionized Democratic Party Rust Belt stronghold, the Midwest, to the Republican Party and to President Trump. At the White House, he served as chief strategist and senior counselor to the president. He has many other extracurricular activities. Steve is also chairman for the Rule of Law Society, which is investigating abuses of power by the Chinese Communist Party. And he is co-founder of the Committee on the Present Danger, China. To this effect, he is drawing the developed world's gaze toward China and the brewing clash of civilizations. He has recently produced the new docudrama, Claws of the Red Dragon, exposing the connection between Huawei and the Chinese Communist Party. This is an incredibly strong work. I urge all to see it. Earlier in his varied career, Steve was a Goldman Sachs M&A banker. No booze. He understands corporate finance and Wall Street. I mean, if you're in the vampire squid, you're going to understand the vampire squid. He understands Wall Street, its culture, its at times perverse incentives that are at odds with the greater social good. He certainly understands the economics of the media sector. He has a master's degree in national security studies from Georgetown University and an MBA from Harvard Business School. Steve also served in the United States Navy for 7 years. Go Navy. He was a surface warfare officer serving aboard the USS Paul F. Foster in the Western Pacific, the Arabian Sea, and the Persian Gulf. He served at the Pentagon as a special assistant to the Chief of Naval Operations. In between these early years and his recent highly visible foray into national and international politics, he engaged in many projects in finance and banking, as well as documentary filmmaking. And of course, as we all know here, he took the helm of Breitbart.com after Andrew's tragic passing. He made Breitbart into the ultimate media platform bête noire of the mainstream established media machine, a machine he later correctly dubbed the enemy of the people. He has clearly been proved right regarding this moniker, as shown by the American trust in our corrupted Fourth Estate. Check out Project Veritas's recent expose of ABC News if you need such a reminder. Full disclosure, I proudly serve on the board of Project Veritas, and I spoke to James today. There's more coming. A lot more coming. There's an old Wall Street expression, flow begets flow. And after this recent expose, the amount of people coming to Project Veritas, it's overwhelming. And he sends his regards. He would have loved to have been here, but he's speaking at an event in Florida that he was long-term committed to. Coming back to Steve. Steve has been prescient about many things in recent years. Certainly he had his money where his mouth was regarding the rise of a certain populist conservative president, running on a successful Steve Bannon-honed America First platform. Over the years at Breitbart, and especially via his daily radio show on Sirius, Steve astutely predicted the rise of global populism as a pendulum shift reaction to the self-serving chicanery of the global plutocratic elite and their cronies of the entrenched technocratic political establishment. This is the financial and public sector manager class of the Excella corridor here in the US. And in Europe, those he definitively called out as the party of Davos, those hell-bent on devolving European nation-state sovereignty to the Brussels superstate in contravention of the wills of their electorates. Oh, by the way, Steve also directly worked on and forecasted Brexit correctly. Steve predicted the rise of BDS and called out the bigotry of the hypocritical left in the academy and political sphere. And recall, Breitbart was the first international news platform to operate their Israel-based newsroom in Jerusalem. To really see the scale and scope of Steve's social analysis and political predictive powers, I urge all here and all who might see this later online to listen to Steve's address to the Institute for Human Dignity held at the Vatican in 2014. It is easily found online, and I promise you will thank me. This is the kind of timestamp on an exposition of worldview which does not lend itself to a future moving of goalposts. And boy, does it resonate right here, right now, 5 years later. Of course, there's Steve's current focus on China, where he's become a leading voice calling out China's rise and the danger a CCP-led China poses to us all in the developed West if China is allowed to become hegemonic. Most recently, as in recent weeks, he has launched the War Room podcast with Jason Miller and Raheem Kassam, my former Breitbart London editor, and an exceedingly easy chap to work with, I assure you all. Hi, Raheem. Y'all, you know about it. In the daily podcast, Steve and crew puts forward the fact pattern as to what is transpiring in the impeachment putsch, because that's what it is, being attempted by the political left. He gives the ammo to the grassroots right to help take back the narrative from those who are brazenly engaging in an ends justify means, Alinskyite scheme to negate a free and democratic election. As Steve said from the main stage at CPAC a couple years ago, if you think they are going to give you deplorables back your country without a fight, you are sorely mistaken. Oh, yeah. This, too, was prescient and predictive of what we are obviously all seeing right now. I have one personal anecdote I'd like to share that, to me, gets to the core of who Steve is and reflects his voracious ability to consume information and the encyclopedic breadth of his knowledge. As most who know him know, it's rare to see Steve without a book in his hand. To that end, in 2016, I sent him a book. The book was my father's recently translated into English and published diary of his life under communism in Warsaw, Poland in the mid-1950s. I had sent around this volume to a slew of folks in my network in the American conservative movement. I probably had personally distributed half the print run to my friends and contacts. I doubt more than a handful of folks ever opened it, let alone read it. More than a few of these folks are in the audience tonight. You know who you are. Well, I sent it to Steve 2 weeks before the GOP convention in Cleveland, and when I arrived and was spending some time at the Breitbart area of the media center, he pulled me over and told me that he'd read it. And then he started citing episodes from it by the day of entry and shared with me what he learned about this unique time and place in world history and what he saw in my father's experience that was applicable to today. This was some heady stuff indeed, and I'm not going to lie, this was very gratifying. More recently, I handed him a copy of a book on China, China's Vision of Victory, by an acquaintance of mine during an evening screening of Claws of the Red Dragon here in New York City a few weeks ago. By 5 a.m. the next morning, I was receiving texts about how well this author diagnoses the risks of a rising China and how well he communicates potential solutions. The capacity that Steve has to absorb knowledge, draw upon it, effectively utilize it, putting all the pieces together and executing a strategy to effect change. This is why he has been such a successful warrior in the battle of ideas. Engaging the battle of ideas is why we are here tonight. And more specifically, it's why I have the honor to present Steve the inaugural Frederic Rene Coudert Jr. Award. Some background on the award's namesake. Don't worry, despite having a French name, this guy's no Jacobin. On the contrary. Coudert was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from New York from 1947 to 1959. He was a former member of this club and a true conservative stalwart. He fought vociferously against the Rockefeller-John Lindsay establishment GOP faction in this club. And I imagine today he'd be quite pleased with the current club stewardship. Representative Coudert was a World War I veteran and lieutenant in the U.S. Army and a Columbia Law grad. When he was a New York State Senator, he spearheaded the Rapp-Coudert Committee. Between 1940 and 1942, this committee sought to identify the extent of communist influence in the New York school system. Its inquiries and subsequent discoveries led to the dismissal of more than 40 members of City College of New York staff alone. The committee exposed dozens of instructors who were overtly teaching communist pablum to public school students. Boo is right. Very spirited club. It's great tonight. I have to say, I do think we need to bring back the Rapp-Coudert Committee to New York today, now. Maybe by referendum, but, you know, New York's a tough state. Coudert endorsed William F. Buckley's 1965 conservative campaign for New York City mayor over liberal Republican and superlatively failed eventual office holder John Lindsay. On an aside, Bill Buckley gave us one of the definitive quotes that truly gets to the soul of the contemporary conservative populist shift that Steve Bannon has so helped to usher in, and that we're extolling here tonight. Buckley said, "I'd rather entrust the government of the United States to the first 400 people listed in the Boston phone book than to the faculty of Harvard University." Given this intellectual milieu and the political legacy of Frederic Coudert Jr., there is no better person to receive this inaugural award than Stephen K. Bannon. I am proud to call him a friend and a mentor, and a stable genius as well. Steve, please come up and be recognized and appreciated and accept the first Frederic Coudert Jr. Award of the New York Young Republicans Club, and share with us some of your thoughts about the state of the world. Congratulations. Let me grab the award. President Gavin Wax. We'll leave that there.
Do I get my microphone?
4 more years! 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 4 more years!
And because we cannot fence this guy in, he needs a floating life.
I'm greatly honored. Thank you very much for the New York Young Republicans Club. I never know about coming to a place where the intelligence guys
Didn't kill these?
Good. Better. I never know about coming to a place where the intel officers are sitting here right at the front table, right? Where's James Angleton when you need him? I've never seen this before. Pretty spooky. I was going to come here and talk about. Geopolitics and some of the things happening in China, but I think we have to have a partners discussion. We're about to enter the worst 16 weeks
me back down. Let's have a part of this discussion. Why do I need a mic? Listen, here's the reality. 1 year ago, or 3 years ago from tomorrow night at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we got the exit polls for President Trump. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it was going to be a landslide for Hillary Clinton. We were tied in Ohio, tied in Iowa, and we were losing every other state. And I had told the 90 days before, if you just focus on three things, if you just focus on stopping mass illegal immigration, limiting legal immigration to protect our workers, Hispanic and black workers at the low end of the wage scale, and tech workers at the high end, and build a wall. Number two, bring back jobs from China. And number three, stop these endless foreign wars with 100% metaphysical certitude. With 100% metaphysical certitude, you will be president of the United States. I don't care if we're 10, 12, 14, 16 points down. There's only two numbers that matter. Right track, wrong track. 2/3 of the country still thought we were on the wrong track. They liked President Obama and his wife. But they didn't think he was an agent of change. The most important number, though, came from the great and now deceased pollster Pat Goodell. He had been doing this work for 30 years. And for the first time in American history, 70% of the American people believed America was in decline. And they thought our elites were comfortable with that. It was this managed decline that Donald Trump ran against. That's what Make America Great Again is. In the upper Midwest, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Iowa, I said we drive this home and compare and contrast her with the Clinton cash, with a corrupt and incompetent elite. And you represent the backbone of this country. You represent the hard work that this club showed from 1911 to this day. You represent Burt's dictum, that we owe as much to who came before us as those that are going to come after. And Donald Trump, for all his imperfections, is an armor-piercing shell. November 8th at 5 o'clock, the exit polls came in, and you could see the mainstream media. You know, Megyn Kelly's putting on her makeup, they're high-fiving. They were going. This thing was going to be over by 8 or 9 o'clock. Hillary was having another, carafe of champagne. Heard who won? Okay, stay classy. Stay classy. At 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, the Detroit Free Press announced that Michigan had gone for Hillary Clinton. The Detroit Free Press has been around, I think, 150 years. They've never made the wrong call on a presidential election. Then Florida, in North Carolina, and the firewall started coming down. They started getting nervous. At midnight, the Detroit Free Press reversed its call and said that it was a toss-up. At that moment where we knew Wisconsin and Pennsylvania were Donald Trump was president-elect of the United States. The AP called it at 2:30 in the morning. And Hillary Clinton gave him a call. It took about 2 or 3 minutes. We walked down the stage. He gave a speech. From that very moment, the resistance, the nullification project has started. They do not care what you think, and they do not care what the American people vote. And this is why I'm here to have a partners conversation. What in the hell are we going to do about it? Fight. Exactly. Hell yeah. since that night. 2018, we lost the House of Representatives. If you gross up the election, it was 52-46. They beat us by 8 million votes. You know, I don't care about coming in second. Victory begets victory. This is about winning. If you win, you get to drive the narrative. If you don't win, particularly the way it's structured today, you just sit there. This is about victory. Woo! We're in a dogfight. We're in a dogfight. We're not winning right now. We're winning by an individual who's taking on the apparatus, the established order. But think about it. Brexit and 2016 are inextricably linked. It's the working class labor vote in the Midlands that gave the British their freedom. Just like in the upper Midwest. It's those jobs that went to Asia in the Depression and angst that came there, followed by the drugs. The great heartland of the United Kingdom and the United States. That's why it's inextricably linked. And think about how it's played out. On the day that they gave the formal vote to impeach Donald Trump is the same day that the English were supposed to be out of the EU. Right now, in the timing, on the day of the English election, December 12th, could possibly be the day that Nancy Pelosi brings 2 charges, 2 articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. We have to embrace something. President Trump is going to be impeached. I want you to embrace that. It's only happened twice in the Republic. And then he's going to go to a trial. And you lawyers know this is just not, they're just not going to take the information that came from the House. This is going to be a real trial with real evidence. You don't believe all this glib talk about, oh, we've got the Senate, it's going to be fine. Mitch McConnell went from, I'm going to dismiss this in 5 minutes, to, oh, I have a constitutional duty to have a trial, to having the lunch in the Senate that Ben Sass and Jeff Flake reported on, and a private vote where 35 senators voted guilty. And then Mitch McConnell, 2 weeks ago, two Tuesdays ago, does a PowerPoint presentation in the Senate that talks about they're going to get the articles of impeachment. It's going to be 6 hours a day from 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, for a trial lasting 6 weeks. Do not think that the Trump revolution is going to be the same on the other side of this as it is now. This is to blunt the arc of the Trump revolution. The established order in the United Kingdom, in the United States, the party of Davos, that confluence of financial interests, corporate interests, the lobbyists, and a permanent political class. It's the civil service and the bureaucracy in England that stopped Brexit. When May came overseas in the White House, they didn't see it as an opportunity to be grabbed, but a problem that had to be dealt with. That's what you're seeing on this line of bureaucrats. I don't question these people's patriotism. It's the exact point that they went to West Point. It's the exact point that they served their country. It's the exact point that they have been dedicated public servants for 40, 50 years. That highlights what the problem is. The permanent political class, this apparatus, it's not a deep state. It's up in your face. These gentlemen right here can talk about it. They see it. If you look at all the discussion in this impeachment process today, it's because they are adamantly opposed to America First national security policy. And America First national security policy is not America isolationist. What it is, it looks at the world in a sophisticated manner. It looks at the world as a collection, whether it's NATO and Europe, the Persian Gulf, the South China Sea, or the Northwest Pacific, around the Eurasian landmass. We have a series of commercial relationships, capital markets, trade deals, and an American security guarantee, which is now $1 trillion. That's a defense budget. It's $1 trillion. You add in everything. You add in DOD. You add in the security, the intelligence apparatus. It's $1 trillion a year. And backed up by the kids of the deplorables. They're the ones at the 38th parallel. They're the ones on patrol in the South China Sea. They're the ones in the Hindu Kush. They're the ones up in Syria. It's their rejection that they don't want to do it anymore. It's not that they don't want to serve their country, but they want the allies to throw something into the kitty, and particularly they want the allies' kids on patrol in NATO in Afghanistan. It was this patriot right here that brought to everybody's attention when he talked about how do we do a smarter thing in Afghanistan. That the NATO allies, look, I'm pro-NATO. It's Donald Trump that saved NATO. Not all the happy talk. Not all the happy talk. I'm not speaking ill to death about Senator McCain. He was a war hero and a great man. But it doesn't mean we can't disagree with what his policies were. All the happy talk of going into NATO and talking about a shared values. Yes, we have shared values. But we're looking for allies, not protectorates. Right now, NATO and Europe is a protectorate. The Gulf Emirates are a protectorate. The South China Sea, the littoral nations are a protectorate. Up in the Northwest Pacific. We're not an imperial power. We're a revolutionary power. Yeah. It is that permanent political class and Foggy Bottom and the corporatists and the financiers in the City of London and Wall Street, the party of Davos, that has made the United States military an expeditionary police force. On September 18th of 2008, in the Oval Office, Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson, the head of the Federal Reserve, and the Secretary of Treasury went to see President Bush and said, we have a problem. Lehman Brothers just went bankrupt. We didn't really understand the commercial paper market. We need $1 trillion in cash by 5 o'clock today, or the American financial system will melt down. 72 hours after that, the world financial system will melt down. And 72 hours after that, we'll have global anarchy. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve on that second, that day, was $880 billion. When Donald Trump raised his hand to take the oath to become President of the United States, it was $4.5 trillion. Many of you people in this room know this. We just opened the spigots to liquidity. We bailed out the hedge funds. We bailed out the banks. We bailed out the insurance companies. Negative interest rates. There's a corollary to that. The little guy gets stiffed. A savings account has zero. The pension funds have $9 trillion a gap. You can't issue a bond offering anymore for a school to fix the leaky roofs because there's no juice in the bond. It's the deplorable that paid the price. Yeah. The fuse that was lit in the Oval Office in 2008 exploded in this city at 2:30 in the morning on the 9th of November of 2016 when Donald Trump was elected president. That's the reaction. The reaction is that we're not going to do this anymore, that there has to be a different way. And now you see Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders have this kind of have a type of populism. What they offer is not just scary. It's revolutionary what will do to this country. Forget the Green New Deal. Forget Medicare for all. Forget all the top of the program. Look underneath. You've heard of modern monetary theory? That's what's underneath it. It's going to destroy the concept of money. The Chinese right now, because remember, China, Persia, and Turkey, that access with Russia, maybe with Pakistan, certainly with North Korea, is trying to control the Eurasian landmass. What are they trying to do? They understand we're in economic war with them. We have sanctions on virtually every country, or trade restrictions that are equivalent to sanctions. They're trying to get off the SWIFT system. They're trying to get off the U.S. dollar's reserve currency. And China's announcing blockchain and cryptocurrency, gold back, to get off the U.S. dollar. Eric Prince is absolutely correct. The threat of the administrative state and how we deconstruct it is absolutely a threat to American liberty. However, we're in 1936. That's why this club's so important. That's why you are so important. Here's the scary thought. That you read in this room tonight. If you don't personally dedicate yourself, and I mean dedicate yourself, I don't mean write a few checks. I mean, unless you personally dedicate yourself to save this republic, and I mean in every waking hour, what has been bequeathed to us, not just the greatest and most powerful, the most decent country in the history of mankind, that's freed more people, created more wealth, and gone about it in a noble and humble way, that we're going to lose in the living memory that of those living today. And history is going to weigh and measure us. Like you weigh and measure the people in 1911 that built this institution, that built this city, that built this nation, that went through the Great Depression, World War II, defeated the Soviet Union. It's our time now. I'm in the older part, I'm in a boomer. But the young millennials in this office, it's your turn. If you do not take the responsibility, we're going to lose. That I can guarantee you. We don't have that many people on our side of the football. Okay? I like the team that lines up with us, but we don't have that many. And that's why we need complete and total dedication. If we have a small corpus of people who are relentless and will fight and will not give up and say, no, I am not going to let this happen. My duty, my honor, my country is all dedicated to this. Then we will win. And if we flinch and if you blink in this room, I can guarantee you we will lose. I didn't mean to be so harsh tonight. But over the next 16 weeks, you're going to see some of those vicious fighting in American politics. This country is as divided as before the Civil War. And the great wisdom, this is the great fourth turning in American history, the Revolution, the Civil War, the Great Depression, and these cycles of history, this is the fourth one. We have always made the right decision. And you know why? It was people like that founded this club that put their shoulders to the wheel. That responsibility is your responsibility. You are the beneficiary of this. It's on your shoulders. And if we pull together, we'll win. I want to close with a remark that Napoleon used to tell his marshals, the marshals of France. When you set out to take Vienna, take Vienna.